You know, in the world of small equipment repairs, I think one of the things that is traditionally never done, right, and it's just overlooked, is cleaning the machines and then giving them, well, we know lubrication, but then giving them a simple finish, a simple refinish, simple touch-up of paint to stop the rust from getting worse. I've seen these machines just completely rot out, okay? And that's because they're not cleaned, and at times you might want to actually refinish it. Now, pretty much in the world of small equipment repair, right, pretty much nobody does this. There's never a budget set aside. So it's really up to you guys, the homeowner or the user, the end user. I do this for my customers, and there is a charge for that. And also, don't forget, a lot of times, fellas, I buy these machines. They're just either they're thrown out or I get them from Mikey or wherever else. Customer, drops one off, and they're a mess, right? They're kind of free or super low price for a reason. They've gotten too far for the general mechanic to do. It may be too expensive, but I take these things and I take them from what really is a curbside wreck to something that you can get a really pretty penny for. But it does require work. It requires some technique and a few things to look out for. So in this video, we're going to get started on that. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I do with some simple tools and some simple supplies. And you think, well, repainting. I don't paint the whole thing. Once in a while I do, right? I'll be honest. But what I'm talking about in this one today is a touch-up. It's a good cleaning, removal of all the sand and the salt that's been sitting for 6 months or longer, right? Because maybe if you stop using machine in March and it's not until November when you use it again, imagine all that sand and salt sitting on there, and you just keep doing this year after year and you're not thinking about cleaning it. And finally now it's gotten to a point where it's just a disaster. It's going to rust and just fall apart kind of rust. So let's get started on this video and I'll show you what I do. Stay tuned. All right, now in this segment here, I'm just showing you the inside of the transmission. This is, we got to clean all this stuff out. I'm going to do the basic lube and cleaning of the clutch assembly. And you can see the rust around it, right? There's not a lot here, but we're going to do all of the cleaning and sort of the maintenance to the machine really first, after the initial wash. And then it's going to need to go out for another cleaning if it's really bad. Like if I'm going to hit with a little bit of sandpaper. Usually I use a wire wheel around some areas. I might use my disc with my sanding disc. There's a number of things that I'll be using on this. All right, let me just show you real quick. All right, so the axles are cleaned off. I'm not too worried about these because there's a plastic sleeve that goes inside the rims. So I'm not worried about that. They come off real easy. Did a little wire wheeling and also my cookie on the sides. All right, so that's kind of prepped, and we'll get down here later. All right, that wheel, all right, cleaned off, all right, with solvent, and then my Scotch-Brite pad, which is around here somewhere. I don't know what I do with it. And as is customary, we're going to treat it with a little bit of super clean degreaser, just a little bit, right? She's not terrible. That's just to knock off the soot and the yuck and the dust and whatever grease, me touching it. And we'll just leave that sit for a little bit since it's kind of moist out here. We're just doing the barrel. So that's about the extent of the wire wheeling I did. I didn't do a lot. I'm not going to show it. Mostly down here, just a few spots. We'll get this thing looking real pretty. And then we'll rinse it again. So I rinse it first, then I hit this super clean on. Leave it sit, we'll come back and rinse it again. That'll get the bulk of the junk off. Then I'll hit it with that little bit of acid that I like to use, mix a little bit of the super clean tire, wheel and rim cleaner, which has got an acid in it. And that'll etch it. And we can even hit a few spots on the motor, and just not using force here, we're just rinsing and letting chemical do our job. And then leave that sit for a little while, maybe go grab some lunch, come back and keep it wet, but out here today it'll stay okay. And then I'll rinse it one more time and we'll bring it in and we'll deal with it later. I have some other things to do. Right? Yeah, it's not bad. This is just a nice cleanup. All right, now that it's rinsed off, I'm going to put some of this on. This is the all-wheel cleaner. This is an acid. So I'm going to put this on. It's been rinsed. That got rid of a lot of the grease. There's no brushing or anything. Just try to get rid of some of the junk. And like I said, I am going to wipe it down with a bit of solvent right before I paint. So I'm going to put this on, put her on her butt, get into the can. That'll dissolve more of the rust. When I come back from lunch or whatever, I'll hit it again, give it another 5 or 10. And it's like a foamy too. So we really only need it on the areas where there's rust. Okay, that's really only. It's just going to remove a lot of the overburden. So you'll see it'll get rid of a lot of the stuff that, like if you have oxidation, that white fuzz, it's real good for that. Right, I'm going to let it sit here for a bit in this position, and I'll come back and we'll get into another position. Yeah, it's nice. Just splooge it on. All right, we'll be back in a minute. It's getting wet out here. Super clean. Get yours now. Available at local stores. Now let's take a look at the auger area, right? What I call the tank or the drum, right? The barrel. And inside of there, it can get pretty nasty and pretty rough. This one, as you see, it's really not all that bad. So what are our options? Well, I go back in there. This is before I did a bit of an acid treatment. So that's one of your options. You go in there, get it super cleaned. If there's any, let's back up a little bit, right? So I want to cover two topics, right? People put PAM and silicone sprays inside of these things. So this needs to be discussed first, because any kind of silicone spray is a great idea, and we'll get to that in a minute. But any kind of silicone spray, if it's ever been sprayed in there, which I have no idea, right? As from my point of view, I don't know. If it's your machine, you know. But I don't know. So that's another reason for the super clean, because nothing will get through. Like paint won't stick, the acids won't work. Only the degreaser like super clean and, good hose or pressure washer and some good cleaning, a little bit of time for things to dissolve. And even then, if a lot of silicone has been used on the machine, then paint won't stick. So that's a big problem. So that's part of why the sand, the salt, but then the silicone. So once that's removed, then, and the pressure washer, if you're using a pressure washer, will knock off a lot of the rust. It'll knock off, obviously, loose paint, which is, part of the process. The acids will go in there, and I'm showing a little bit of the kind of acid that Super Clean has. I use a different product. I'll try and put a link, or at least a little cut here so you can see. It's a body acid. It's a DTM, direct to metal. We use it in auto body to prepare a steel surface, even some other metals as well. It works well. But for a steel surface, and it leaves a zinc coating so it won't flash rust. You're going to pay a little bit more for that, but it's $50 a gallon or something. And you can use it straight, and you can even dilute it a little bit. So that's one thing. You're going to get off a lot of rust by letting it sit. Now, if it's cold out, right, everything works slower. If it gets too cold, it may not work at all, but it'll work to some degree. Brightens up aluminum. So that's a feature right there, is that you can get rid of a lot of that rust. Now, what to do next? You can, anywhere on the machine, you can treat it with a rust reformer. There's a number of different types. In fact, I think even Duplicolor has one in a spray can. So you can put that on any surface that needs, that has rust on it, and it will convert it, and it'll act like a bit of a primer. That's one option. You're going to need a couple of days for it to dry and cure properly before you can put any paint on it. So you can reach in there, right, and spray that, and spray whatever you want. Try not to get too much of it on a painted surface, because it'll stick, and then you'll be able to prime over it, but it's really for rust, right? So on like a really shiny painted surface, it'll get weird. So wherever you can, if you can wipe it off from those areas. The acid also helps to etch the paint a bit, to get that surface sort of on a microscopic level to receive paint. And then what I think I don't mention in one of the other segments is I use Scotch-Brite pad. And so if I put some acid or even Scotch-Brite, like a cleaner, a super cleaner on a surface, and I will wipe a little bit with a Scotch-Brite pad. That it sort of spreads it out. It makes it work a little faster, It also etches the area a little bit so that you got a little something, a tooth, you know, for paint to grab onto. So those are some features, right? Some things, possibilities that you can think of. You can also reach in there with a can of rusty metal primer. It doesn't matter. You don't have to match the paint and have the, you know, if you want to take it all apart and do like a mint job, that's not what this is about. Blow a little bit of rusty metal primer in there, and then when that dries, when you go to paint, you can then sort of, you know, get in there and shoot some paint in a few areas. And then when all that is done, if you want to then, you know, go back to PAM or WD-40 or silicone sprays, there's a lot of videos out there on sort of what to put, you know, in these areas so that the snow and the ice sort of sheds off. That's another story. But we got to get rid of all that stuff first. All right, let's get to the next clip. Not too bad, right? So I got primer on it. I'll show you the stuff I'm using. Wow, I just whistled. Yeah, I'll show you in a bit. Let me see what paint I want to use. I think I have an idea, and we'll be back. Just letting it dry a little. Almost. All right, I'm just letting it tack up. I can throw the wheels back on now, I think. That's good enough. A light coats, because we have, it's backed by some primer, right? Let's finish up the top, and then I got a few other things to do. Just a few more things to do. All right, I got the back on. All right, let me put it on its feet. And I got to put some Earl in it, and we got to give it a test. Put some Earl and some Gaz. Now, before we get out of here and we talk about, and I show you guys the products that I used, I just want to remind you to check out the folder that this will be in, which is a PaintJucation folder. There's a lot of other projects in there. I'll be putting more in. And they cover, you know, different aspects of this. I can't do it all in one video because, well, it would be too long. Nobody would watch it. So there's that. And also, you know, hit the like and subscribe or follow button, right? Leave a comment, and any questions, just let me know. And if you have any ideas for future video, something you'd like to see, please share with all of us. And hopefully I can get to that. So I want to talk a little bit about the products that I use, and you can see here in the finished product, right, comes out really good. Now, I don't use a lot of paint. I do a lot of blending, and I do show that again in other videos. I will mask over any sticker I think it's worthy of saving. I think that makes everything just look a lot nicer. It looks more professional, and it also, there's no point in painting something that doesn't need to be painted, so that's where feathering and everything comes in. Some of my other videos, I get a little bit more into, you know, I don't use Bondo really, but I will use some of the things to touch up little blemishes and issues, spot putty, what have you. On this one, I did not use rusty metal primer. You can use rusty metal primer. I often like to use a high build primer, and that allows me to sort of fill in any divots and pitting and whatever. It just levels really nice. And of course, as I often say, you have to use primer, because the paints, any of the paints that I use, they don't stick on their own. I've never really found one that does. It just doesn't come out well, and you're going to be using a lot of paint for no reason. And I particularly like the red machines, because the red primers or black or something like that, because between black and red, it's very easy to match. The primer is very close to the correct color. I don't use a lot of primer. I don't use a lot of paint. And then I sort of mist over the rest of the barrel, and then I let it dry for a little while, not too long, and then I start hitting it with a little bit of clear, and I have a tendency to mist the clear on. I'm not really looking for like a shiny, glossy effect. So I try to use satin paints, or a low gloss or a matte finish, again, to hide blemishes, to scatter the light a little bit. We're not looking to do a super mint job here. We're looking to sort of rust abatement, make things a bit more presentable, and of course, get that, you know, some more machine years out of the machine, and, you know, have it respectable. It's fun to look at, right? It's nicer to have. Of course, if you're selling it, it's a selling point. I wheel a lot of these machines out to people, and like, it looks like it does in the picture, right? And they're like, no, actually, they say it looks better, right? And they don't argue with me when I tell them I do all this other stuff to the machine, right? I did this and I did that. They start looking at it and they go, wow, you know, because generally people don't do this. So there's a lot of added value. I go that extra mile. And I think overall it comes out really good. So everything gets a little bit of clear on it. And you do have to be careful, though. If you clear at the wrong point in time, you could cause grazing and, weird paint reactions. I tend to start clearing pretty quick. I start in an area that isn't going to have a big impact if something goes wrong, that allows me to test the paint. Keep in mind that it depends, right? It depends upon the weather you're spraying in. Even though I do run heat or whatever, the temperatures range so much in the shop, and you can have complete paint failure. So always test in a small area. Everything's got to be super clean, right? I keep talking about that. I go over everything with a little bit of thinner before I even paint, after the whole cleaning process and everything. Wipe everything down with a blue shop towel, like lint free. And just to make sure, and the object is to get everything to stick. So I think overall it comes out very good. Like I said, I don't use a lot of paint. Of the paints that I'm showing, I could probably get, on like lawnmowers and stuff, I might be able to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 machines, right, out of like a can of paint. And I'm using different paints. So I'm spreading that out across, blacks and silvers and clears and whatever color. So if you guys have anything that you want to mention, again, leave it down in the comment, let me know. And I think we'll go out here and let's just take a look at the machine running a little bit, and then we'll get out of here in the outro. So I'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching Archer's Garage.